Hi Whovians, Harry here, and welcome to my breakdown of Doctor Who Redacted Series 2, Episode 5, Reboot, where in this episode we meet a familiar face and also come into contact with what is supposedly one of the most dangerous threats in the Doctor Who world. But before we get into the video, don't forget to subscribe, also leave a like and comment down below, and let's get into the video. So, this episode starts with the reveal that Cleo and Apex have spent the night together. So, obviously following on from their kiss in the moonlight last episode, which I did a breakdown of, so check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, it seems that they have spent the night together and the adults know what I'm talking about. So, once they wake up, Apex reveals that he has a gift for Cleo, and it is the Wave Distorter, or as Cleo says, the magic flute. And of course the Wave Distorter was how Apex stopped the giant rats in the episode Apex. And also this Wave Distorter sets up how Cleo defeats the Cobot at the end of this episode. And not only is this a callback to the episode Apex and a call forward to the end of this episode, it is also a callback to the episode Underground in this series, when Cleo thought the ring that Apex bought in the London Underground was for her, but it was actually for Room or whoever could help him get over his radiation sickness. But now, Apex has got Cleo a present, and it is the Wave Distorter. However, the happiness for the two is suddenly cut short, as Apex gets a phone call from a contact and he has to leave. So, Apex says, "Look, Cleo, I just want you to go around your day, I want you to be happy." So Cleo decides to take Apex's advice and goes about her day. But while she does, a drone attacks her, revealing that Honor is basically kidnapping her, which is insane and crazy. Honor is one of the craziest, people in the Doctor Who universe, and she sent her drones which almost killed Apex to drag down Cleo into basically committing another crime, kidnapping, of course, Cleo. However, Honor justifies this use of the drones by saying that she wasn't kidnapping Cleo, she was basically trying to get a meeting with her. And through this meeting, they of course talk about Apex and the Doctor and Honor wanting to get a TARDIS, and a lot of weird stuff is revealed. So during the meeting, Honor reveals that she's actually 112, and obviously Honor's species can live a lot longer, and she reveals that she is the same species as Apex, which makes the night that Cleo and Apex spent together a bit weird, as Honor literally says Cleo is basically a child, and if Cleo is basically a child to Honor, Cleo is also basically a child to Apex. And if what the episode was insinuating, and I'm right about that insinuation, it's just weird. But moving past that, Honor reveals that she's also from the planet Origin, so of course she would be the same age as Apex. She is the same species as Apex, so Apex can live as long as she has. And the plan, and of course that is what Apex said, the planet that he was from Origin, when he was telling his story, where we don't know whether he was lying or not, to Cleo in the episode Apex, but it is basically explained in this episode that Apex is from the planet Origin, just like Honor. And through this meeting, Honor keeps going on about her TARDIS, and Cleo realises that Honor, even with all her treasures that she's got from Apex or other people, she's still unhappy, and this could be a reference to Carabraxos from the episode Time Heist in Doctor Who, where the 12th Doctor, gives Carabraxos his number, so in the future she can telephone his past to basically kick her out of her vault because she was unhappy. It's a bit hard to explain because it's a Moffat episode, but basically Honor is like Carabraxos in the episode Time Heist because she was unhappy even with treasures from all throughout the galaxy. And moving on, Honor also wants Cleo to contact the Doctor and bring them to Earth so she can get her TARDIS, which is what she's been on about through this meeting with Cleo. However, Cleo refuses to do so, and of course, by doing this, Honor makes her drones form together by using a wave integrity field to create a cobot, which is basically a killing machine. And Honor tells Cleo that Apex actually stole this tech that made this cobot from Torchwood. And of course, we learned throughout the several past episodes of Doctor Who Redacted Series 2 that Torchwood facilities have been broken into. And of course, Apex obviously broke into these Torchwood facilities on the behest of Honor to steal tech that would make this cobot. So finally we have answers into why Apex broke into Torchwood facilities. And since Cleo won't summon the Doctor, Honor leaves her, telling her that if she moves, the cobot will kill her, and then it will clear out the London Underground. So not only is she wanting to kill Cleo, she is also, clearing out the London Underground and maybe killing all the aliens that are in the London Underground. So this Honor is insane. However, as I just said, Honor said that she would leave and Cleo to be killed by the cobot. And of course, she does leave, doing the classic villain trope of assuming that her plan would work and kill her enemy. However, of course, it doesn't work because the villain tropes never work, unless it's a horror movie, which the villain makes sure they kill them. But yeah, superhero movies, the villain always leaves and thinks their enemy will be killed, but they're not. So of course, Cleo gets through this encounter with the cobot fine, as we see that the cobot is just watching Cleo, but she remembers that when the drones were forming together to make Honor's cobot, she remembers that they were saying that they were being held together by a wave integrity field. So very clever from Cleo, as she remembers that Apex gave her the wave disruptor, and then by putting basically 2 and 2 together, the wave integrity field and the wave disruptor, Cleo very cleverly basically uses it to just make the cobot fall apart. And Honor did say earlier that the cobot was a big threat and it was basically a killing machine, and Cleo defeats it like that. Really, a bit of an anticlimactic ending to the cobot. However, we now move on to what Abby and Shawna are dealing with in this episode, and it is revealed that they have got in contact with Rani, who is in New York at the moment, and Rani, of course, has already appeared in Doctor Who Redacted in this series. She appeared in Series 1, and she also has appeared in previous episodes in Series 2. And of course, Rani is from the Sarah Jane Adventures, so that's when she first got into the Doctor Who universe when we first saw her. And another reference to the Sarah Jane Adventures is that Rani wants to meet Abby and Shawna at 13 Bannerman Road. And of course, 13 Bannerman Road was Sarah Jane Smith's house. And of course, Sarah Jane Smith was played by the late, great Elizabeth Sladen, and she was companion to the 3rd and 4th Doctors. She was their companion, and above that, she also met Doctors 1 through to 5 in the episode The 5 Doctors. She also met the 10th Doctor in the episode School Reunion, The Stolen Earth and Journey's End, and also the Sarah Jane Adventures episode The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. And she also met the 11th Doctor in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode The Death of the Doctor. And of course, as I already mentioned, Sarah Jane Smith was so popular that she actually got her own spin-off called The Sarah Jane Adventures that was broadcast on CBBC from 2007 through to 2011. And basically 13 Bannerman Road was Sarah Jane's house, and it was kind of the base for all of the Sarah Jane Adventures. And, obviously, upon coming up to this house, Shawna remarks that it seems like an old woman lives here. Of course, referencing the fact that it was Sarah Jane's house. She used to live there. However, Abby counters that she thinks no one lives here. Of course, referencing the fact that Sarah Jane's orders on her unfortunate death were to shut down 13 Bannerman Road. So, of course, until someone else came along, if they wanted to buy it, they became another Sarah Jane Smith. Of course, that unfortunately never happened, and it was revealed that, Sarah Jane's wishes were to shut down 13 Bannerman Road in the web series Farewell, Sarah Jane Smith. And upon making it to 13 Bannerman Road, we get a bit of tension between Abby and Shawna, because Shawna wants to enter the house. However, Abby says they should wait outside per Rani's orders. But this makes Shawna mad, saying they have faced down UNIT and a world-ending apocalypse. Of course, referencing the events of Recruits and Salvation in Doctor Who Redacted Series 1. And Abby, she of course, has looked up to UNIT and the TARDIS and Rani, when she was, because she knows about the blue box and she is really into all this alien stuff, whereas Shawna and Cleo kind of are more along for the ride. So Abby wants to wait for Rani, however, Shawna does not. And this creates a bit of tension, of course, drawing on their experiences from previous episodes where their relationship has kind of just got more strained as time has come along. And of course, this mirrors kind of Apex and Cleo's toxic relationship. However, Abby eventually gives in and they enter the house. And immediately they see a picture of Rani with some others. And of course, these others are part of the Sarah Jane Adventures gang. So, of course, as I mentioned earlier, Rani first appeared in the Doctor Who universe in the Sarah Jane Adventures spin-off. And Abby actually remarks that Rani looks so young in this photo, meaning that this photo was taken at the time of the Sarah Jane Adventures happening, meaning the people in the picture are, of course, Rani, Sarah Jane Smith, Clyde, and maybe Luke and or Skye. But Luke kind of left when, Rani and Clyde were there with Sarah Jane, and then Skye entered the Sarah Jane Adventures later in this episode. But of course, they have all been part of the Sarah Jane Adventures. Of course, Rani replaced Maria, who was originally across the road from Sarah Jane Smith in Series 1, but Rani replaced her from Series 2 onwards. Of course, Sarah Jane Smith is the lead of the Sarah Jane Adventures. Clyde joined the Sarah Jane Adventures in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode 2. Luke appeared in the first episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures, becoming her adopted son. And then Skye came in the last series of the Sarah Jane Adventures, becoming Sarah Jane's adopted daughter. And now in 13 Bannerman Road, Shawna wants to take a look around, specifically upstairs. But Abby doesn't want her to. However, Shawna tells her not to worry, saying there's no ghost this time. Of course, referencing the events of Salvation, as of course the redacted virus basically made everyone ghosts. And Shawna notices upstairs that there is an attic. And Abby tells her not to go into the attic, but Shawna, of course, does. And that quickly goes wrong as she shouts for Abby. And what has gone wrong is the fact that Shawna's hand is stuck to a force field. And, she can't get it out. However, Rani arrives and she says that she can help free Shawna's hand. And Rani reveals that if Shawna moves forward, basically pushing her whole body, her whole self through the force field, that she can go through the force field and, objects can only move one way through the force field. However, they can't move back, which is why when Shawna was pulling her hand, she couldn't get it out, but she can move her whole body through because objects can only go one way through the force field. However, Rani realises that something is wrong, and that something is that the bubble is shrinking, which means Shawna could be crushed. So, Rani, being like, she has to save Shawna, of course, enters the bubble to make sure it dissipates with no damage to Shawna. So, she moves through the force field bubble like Shawna did, and she meets up with Shawna on the other side, telling her she can get her and, of course, herself out of the situation. And Rani tries to dissipate the bubble by trying to activate Mr. Smith, but Mr. Smith won't activate, and it's kind of unclear as to why, but the episode insinuates that, as Rani explains, that he's been closed down for too long as per Sarah Jane's orders, of course in the web episode Farewell, Sarah Jane. And Rani thinks that she should check Mr. Smith's memory, just because, why is the force field bubble up? Because, Shawna hasn't entered, she only got stuck on the force field, whereas the force field should have got up containing someone in the force field bubble. So Rani checks Mr. Smith's memory and learns that someone, of course, which we now know is Apex, tried to break into Mr. Smith, but they failed to get past his defences. And Rani explains to Shawna that the field that they're in is supposed to contain whoever has, tried to break into Mr. Smith, and also is not meant to shrink. So of course we know that this defense force field is called a containment vortex, that Sarah Jane and the gang used to use when monsters or aliens broke into the attic of 13 Bannerman Road, of course in this spin-off The Sarah Jane Adventures. But Rani is confused as to why no one is in the force field. However, Shawna proposes that they could have just teleported out. And since it was Apex, he would have just used his space manipulator to teleport out as soon as he was caught in the force field. So just even more hints in this episode to point to Apex. But of course, we know from the past episode, since he broke into Torchwood and also other places, we know that he broke into 13 Bannerman Road, which we find out at the end of this episode. And Rani explains to Shawna that since Mr. Smith is a computer, she needs her help to shut down Mr. Smith's defense systems, of course, which are the defense systems keeping the force field up. However, Shawna is worried that she can't shut down the defense systems because, as Rani explains, Mr. Smith runs off his own network, as he's a Zylok. Now, a Zylok is basically a crystalline life form that is, of course, from an alien planet, and it was brought to Earth in a meteor crash and it was learned that Zyloks could interface with computers, and all this information was given to us in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode The Lost Boy. And to make matters worse, on top of Shawna thinking that she might not be able to shut down Mr. Smith's defense systems, the force field starts to shrink faster. So, with Shawna unsure of whether she can shut down the force field before it shrinks too much, they are in a dire situation where they could die. But Rani reluctantly says that there is another way to stop the force field from killing them, and that is to overload Mr. Smith. But as we've just gone over, Rani has told Shawna that a Zylok, of course, Mr. Smith, is a living being. So this would basically be killing him. And Shawna, upon finding this out, searches basically furiously for a reboot system, finding out that Mr. Smith was rebooted a while back, again in the episode the lost boy. As, of course, Shawna doesn't want Mr. Smith to die upon hearing that he is a living creature. And Shawna manages to reboot Mr. Smith, saving her and Rani just in the nick of time. Which, of course, is where this title, Reboot, comes from, given, of course, this episode is title by Mr. Smith being rebooted by Shawna. And with Abby able to rejoin Shawna and Rani, because the force field has now dissipated, Rani reveals that she was actually in New York because she knows that there is a person, Apex, that has been stealing alien artifacts because her friend, Luke, told her about it. Finally, name-dropping a person in the Sarah Jane Adventures, of course, Luke Smith, who is the adopted son of Sarah Jane Smith and was created by the Bane and made his first appearance in the first episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures, but left in the episode The Nightmare Man, only returning for a couple of episodes after the episode The Nightmare Man. But moving past that, in the actual episode, we get a familiar face, because now Mr. Smith is rebooted, and Rani calls out, "Mr. Smith, I need you," and Mr. Smith's theme music plays as he, basically reveals himself to Rani, Shawna, and Abby. And I just want to say, his theme music, that was my childhood. When I first, listened to this music, first listened to this episode, his theme music made me so nostalgic. Maybe even more so than when I saw footage of David Tennant and Catherine Tate acting as the Doctor and Donna in leaked set footage and when the trailers dropped. But this was just so nostalgic for me. And Rani, of course, introduces Abby and Shawna to Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith in this episode is voiced by Alexander Armstrong, and he also voiced Mr. Smith in the Sarah Jane Adventures spin-off. And as Rani introduces Shawna and Abby to Mr. Smith, and is about to reveal Mr. Smith, of course, to Abby and Shawna, he reveals they know who they are and has listened to their podcast as per Sarah Jane's orders, as his orders were to track any discourse related to the TARDIS or the Doctor. And of course, their podcast is of course called The Blue Box Files, of course following the TARDIS throughout history. And when he mentions Sarah Jane Smith, he can't say her name at first, like choking up on saying Sarah Jane, showing that he is a real living being and that he misses Sarah Jane as much as the rest of the gang, maybe even more, as he knew them long before Luke, Clyde, Rani, Maria, Sky. So he was possibly, maybe apart from K9, Sarah Jane's longest companion, and it just hurts that even he kind of clogs up, like, can't say her name at first. It's just sad. And of course, Mr. Smith just mentioned the Doctor as he was to follow any discourse if the Doctor was mentioned, and Abby and Shawna realise that Cleo was right all along, and that the Doctor is a real being and has been this whole time. And because they all met the Doctor in Salvation, they have all met the Doctor. However, the redacted virus from Doctor Who Redacted Series 1 made Abby and Shawna forget that the Doctor even existed. And Mr. Smith reveals that Apex was the one that tried to break into him to find where the Doctor was, because, Apex doesn't know where the Doctor is. That's his angle with Cleo, which we find out at the end, we find out in the next episode. However, Apex didn't get the information of where the Doctor was from Mr. Smith, and that is actually because Mr. Smith doesn't know where the Doctor is. And Rani states that this is a big deal, because for the Doctor to be undetectable to Mr. Smith, there is something wrong, which Mr. Smith explains that there is, that something is amiss in the Doctor's timeline. Now, maybe this is a reference to the Once and Future box set that Big Finish are doing, where the Doctor undergoes degeneration and he has basically followed through every face he has ever had, undergoing some weird degeneration. Or maybe this is following on from the 13th Doctor regenerating into a past face. But I still think Mr. Smith would be able to locate the Doctor under both these circumstances, so it's a bit weird. But moving past that, Mr. Smith, upon relaying the information that he can't locate the Doctor, Rani asks Mr. Smith to send a distress signal out on all intergalactic channels that the Doctor is missing. And this could be a reference to River Song asking the universe to help the Doctor to stop him from dying in the episode The Wedding of River Song. And it would have been a great cliffhanger to end this episode with Rani sending a message out to the universe that the Doctor is missing. However, this isn't the cliffhanger to the episode, as of course the cliffhangers to this episode have to end with Cleo. So of course the cliffhanger to this episode is Cleo getting home and finding out that Apex left because the Doctor isn't coming and Apex can't save the London Underground from Honor. And Apex basically made a hologram to pop up to Cleo to relay this information to her when Cleo got home, to go back to Apex, but Apex revealed that he hasn't stayed, he's going. And Cleo knows that Honor is sending the Cobot to the London Underground to clear out the refugees. And since Apex, has gone, it's up to her to go and warn them, which she does. And the cliffhanger is Cleo meeting the Cobot again in the London Underground. And you think it would be an easy... Cleo would be able to take the Cobot again easily by just using the wave disruptor. However, it manages to bypass it, making it useless. And this episode ends with it grabbing Cleo using lethal force. However, I do find this cliffhanger a bit anticlimactic, as Cleo defeated this Cobot in a second with the wave disruptor, which I know it just broke, but it is a bit underwhelming that the cliffhanger of this episode, the scariest thing, is the thing Cleo has already defeated. But that is just my thoughts. Again, I thought this episode was amazing, apart from the cliffhanger, because we get the return of Sarah Jane Smith. We get, we finally get a reveal of what Apex's angle was, and of course, we get some more insight in the Sarah Jane Adventures, as that was my favourite Doctor Who spin-off growing up. But I just thought this episode was amazing. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this episode. Also, if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like. Also subscribe and share it out. I will see you in the next one.